How's it going, my peeps? It is now time for the Night of Champions 2014 results / highlights and review video. I'll go over the results, some of the highlights in my opinion, and give you guys my thoughts and my review on the show. So it kicks off, of course, with the kickoff, and the kickoff panel this time is Renee Young, Big Show, Booker T, and Alex Riley. As usual, they talk about the matches they want to see, give their predictions, and then afterwards we get Booker T interviewing Goldust. And they talk about old times with them as a tag team champions and all that. They talk about Booker T and Goldust at the movies, and when Goldust followed Booker T back to his hotel room and all of that. And, you know, they're laughing and all that, smiling. But then Goldust gets serious and says, but Booker, you know, the old Goldust is gone. And then Stardust appears, and Stardust looks at Booker T's Hall of Fame ring. He says that's not the cosmic key. And he says that pretty much tonight they'll win the tag team titles. And after that, they go back to hyping up some more matches. And then they bring up Roman Reigns, and they talk about him not being able to compete tonight. They show a video of him in the hospital delivering a message. And they say that he's going to be out several months recovering. And then came time for the peep show. So Christian comes out, and he introduces Jericho. And in the beginning, they talk about them as a tag team before. And they argue about who was the captain of the tag team. And who figured out the name for the tag team. Jericho says the team name, or the name of the team, was the Sexy Beasts, and that he came up with that. And then Christian says, actually the name was Vitamin C, and he came up with that. And then Jericho says that he was the leader, he was the captain, but then Christian says, no, I think, you know, people will agree that I was the captain. I mean, it says it in my nickname, Captain Charisma. And then afterwards, they move on to talk about Randy and Jericho's match with Randy. And Christian says that Jericho is everything Randy's not, and Jericho is like Triple H's lapdog, Triple H's monkey, and all of that. And then Randy appears on a Titantron, and he brings up the fact that he's beaten Christian so many times that that's the reason why Christian can't compete right now. And then he makes fun of Christian and Jericho, calling them the Canadian version of Brad and Angelina. But the question is, who's Brad and who's Angelina? And then once Randy gets off the Titantron, Jericho goes ahead. Oh, and by the way, before Randy went off the Titantron, he said that after he beats Jericho tonight, the only show Jericho's going to be on is Total Divas. So then Jericho replied back by saying, well, if he's on Total Divas, then Randy should be on Total Jackasses. And then Jericho ends the promo by saying that after he beats Randy tonight, Randy will never, ever be the same again. And that ends the peep show and the kickoff. They then show like a video package for Brock vs. Cena, and then the main show starts. And the first match, the match to kick off the show, was the tag team championship matchup. It was the Usos versus Goldust and Stardust. It was a cool match. One cool spot is one of the Usos went for, you know, the jump from the inside of the ring to the outside on Stardust. And at the same time, Goldust was on the apron, so Goldust saw him, you know, charging the ropes to jump. So what Goldust does is he goes ahead and jumps on the other Uso. I think it was, might have been Jay, might have been Jimmy, I'm not sure. But anyways, Goldust hits a flipping senton from the apron onto one of the Usos, and the other Uso jumps on top of Cody Rhodes with like a jumping crossbody. And then another cool spot was when Stardust was down in the corner, so it was like sitting down. So then one of the Usos goes for the running hip attack on Stardust, but then Goldust tries to stop him with a clothesline, but the Uso ducks, and then he hits the attack on Stardust. And then at the same time, Goldust finally turns around from that clothesline attempt, but he gets super kicked right away by the same Uso. And then the ending of the match took place when one of the Usos went for the splash from the top turnbuckle on Stardust, but Stardust got his knees up, and then he quickly rolled him up, got the 3 counts, and Gold and Stardust win the tag team titles. And then after that, Byron Saxton interviews Dolph Ziggler and our Ziggler about the IC Championship match, and Dolph says pretty much he's going to beat The Miz, and after he beats him tonight, The Miz won't want to show up here or in this city anymore. And then after that, it was a great United States Championship match between Sheamus and Cesaro. Really great match. Really great fight. It looked pretty stiff when they were hitting each other. And at some point, this is like towards the end, Cesaro kept on attacking Sheamus in the corner. with, uppercuts, punches, everything. And then he hit a running big boot on Sheamus while Sheamus was still in the corner, but Sheamus did not go down. And then Sheamus, challenged Cesaro to bring it. He yelled at him, "Come on, bring it." So then Cesaro went ahead in the corner and once again started hitting Sheamus again. And keep in mind, Sheamus is in the corner, so the referee is going to separate them. So the referee separates Cesaro. He separated him, I think, twice from Sheamus or something like that. But the last time, he separates Cesaro from Sheamus. And that allows Sheamus to get a bit of distance, and then he hits the bro kick on Cesaro, covers him. Pretty much, he doesn't really cover him in a typical fashion. He just falls on top of Cesaro, and he gets the 3 count. So Sheamus retains the US Championship in a great matchup with Cesaro. And then following that, we get Big Show and Mark Henry backstage, with Big Show hyping up Mark Henry for his match against Rusev. And he tells Mark Henry that he's not alone tonight and that he's got millions of Americans as tag team partners tonight in his match against Rusev. And he hands Henry some new gear, a new singlet with the USA colors. And yeah, then he tells Henry to go ahead and take Rusev's head off. And then following that, we get Florida Georgia Line on commentary. They sit down on or next to the announcer's table, next to the commentators. And they're about to commentate the IC Championship match between Dolph Ziggler and The Miz. And Damien Mizdow and our Ziggler were there. They were at ringside, but eventually they got kicked out when Damien Sandow was provoking Florida Georgia Line and yelling at them. And then they ended up pushing Damien Mizdow. And then Damien Mizdow gets up, and then R-Truth hits him, punches him. And then basically referee kicks him out, tells him to, leave ringside. And then The Miz is kind of distracted by that, and once he turns around, Ziggler hits him with a super kick, but Miz kicks out. And then Damien Mizdow comes running back down, and he gets on the apron, and Ziggler sees that, so he super kicks Damien Mizdow, but because of that slight distraction, The Miz hits the skull-crushing finale on Dolph, covers him, wins the match, and Miz wins back the Intercontinental Championship. And throughout the entire match, or at least, the amount of time Mizdow was at ringside, and after the match, Mizdow was copying Miz the entire time. He would look at The Miz and do exactly what The Miz is doing, even after the celebration and all of that. So I thought that was a funny touch there, funny thing that Sandow did. Although he did that too on Raw, but here it was more pronounced, it was more visible, because he'd look at The Miz and right after do what The Miz is doing. And then they show the message from Reigns from the hospital once again. And then Seth Rollins comes out, and he says, "It's crazy how one day you can be on top of the world, and then the next you're no longer on top of the world." And then something funny I thought he mentioned is he said, despite surgery, surgery is no excuse for Reigns not showing up today. And then he tells the referee, well, if Reigns is not going to show up, then I win by forfeit. So he tells the referee to ring the bell and start counting. So referee rings the bell, or signals for the bell to be rung, I should say. So then he starts counting to 10, and then he gets to 10, because of course Reigns is not going to show up. And then they ring the bell. Justin Roberts announces Seth Rollins as the winner of the match by forfeit. And then Seth Rollins says for it to be, an official victory, the referee needs to raise his hand, so the referee does just that. And then Seth Rollins says, but you know what? I'm not going to let you guys go here without a match. He says he's going to give us a match and goes ahead and issues an open challenge to anybody out there in the locker room. And then on a Titantron, we see a taxi arrive, and then the door opens, and it's Dean Ambrose coming out from the taxi to a big pop. And then he's walking, we see him walking backstage, and then finally he's on the stage, and his music hits, and he heads down to the ring. He goes right after Seth Rollins. And then they fight it out in the ring, and Seth Rollins is trying to run away. Dean Ambrose, throws Seth Rollins in the crowd, and then he fights with Rollins in the crowd. And then Triple H and Jamie Noble, Joey Mercury, and all of them, they come out to try and stop the fight. And Dean Ambrose jumps on all of them, and then he goes ahead and continues on attacking Seth Rollins. And then eventually they get back in the ring, where Dean Ambrose now has a chair, and he's about to hit Seth Rollins with the chair, but Joey Mercury, Jamie Noble, and all of them take down Dean Ambrose, and then Triple H gives them a a rope for them to tie Dean Ambrose's arms behind his back. And they do that while the crowd is chanting, "Let him go, let him go." And yeah, they carry out Ambrose, and that's pretty much it. And Seth Rollins complains about, Dean Ambrose being out there and attacking him. And then we get Rusev versus Henry. Henry comes out first, and then Lillian Garcia sings the national anthem, and then after that, Rusev comes out for the match. In the beginning, Mark Henry dominates. He's got the advantage. He takes Rusev out of the ring. But then, at some point in the match, Rusev, they're on the outside, and Rusev charges Mark Henry and sends him back first onto the steel post and the steel steps. And from then on, Rusev was working on the back, and Henry was selling the back. But despite that, when Rusev tried to lock in the accolade on Mark Henry, he wasn't able to do so because Mark Henry powered out of it. And then shortly after, Henry actually hit the World's Strongest Slam, but he couldn't capitalize on it. He couldn't crawl onto Rusev for the cover, because when Mark Henry would get close to go for the cover, Rusev would roll out the way until he eventually completely rolled out the ring. And then once Rusev got up on the outside, Henry kind of was crawling towards the ropes, and he poked his head out of the ropes. So Rusev hit him with a super kick. And then when Rusev got back in the ring, he hit another super kick, and then he followed that up with the accolade. He was able to lock it in this time, although it was a bit of a struggle, but he got it locked in, and then Henry tapped out, so Rusev won the match. And then afterwards, we got Randy versus Chris Jericho, and it was a great match, actually. One of the cooler spots in the match, or unexpected spots, was Randy was preparing for the RKO. I think it was right after the DDT from, the ropes, or the middle of the ropes. So he prepares for the RKO, he's sounding for it, and I'm just expecting, Jericho to counter it or something like that. But out of nowhere, Jericho hits the codebreaker. He just turns around, runs at Orton, and hits the codebreaker. But he covers Randy, and Randy kicks out. And then right after that was the ending of the match, and it became really predictable, the ending of the match, when I saw Jericho then climb up the top turnbuckle, and then I was like, okay, I can see where this is going. It's going to end with Jericho jumping off the top turnbuckle, and Randy catches him with an RKO, and it ended just like that. One of the biggest things also that gives it away is when superstars jump like that into an RKO, they won't jump into, they'll jump straight into the RKO. It's not like, you won't see Jericho jumping in like a crossbody position, or jumping like as if he was gonna hit a drop kick or something like that. Hopefully you guys get what I'm trying to say, but despite the predictable ending, it was a good match. And also there was a spot where Jericho went for the lion salt on Randy, but Randy rolled out the way, so Jericho landed on his feet, but then Randy grabbed Jericho and hit his signature backbreaker. So, after the match, by the way, after the match there was no punts or anything like that. Randy did attempt a punt during the match, but Jericho got out of the way and rolled Randy up, but of course Randy kicked out. So, yeah, Randy did not take out Jericho with the punt, or he didn't attack him after the match. It was simply, an RKO for the win. And that's that. So then after that, we get a promo video of Paige talking about AJ Lee and Nikki Bella, her opponents for tonight. And then we get an interview with Brie Bella, and she says pretty much that tonight, AJ Lee and Paige are going to get the opportunity to do something she's been wanting to do, and that's pretty much beat up Nikki Bella. And she tells Nikki, or tells the world that Nikki is just like Karma. They're both a bitch. And then after that, AJ Lee comes out, followed by Nikki Bella, and then Paige for the Triple Threat Divas match. And in this Triple Threat, we pretty much saw them all hit their finishers. AJ Lee locked on the Black Widow. You had Nikki actually hit her finisher. When Nikki hit the backbreaker, I think it was on Paige. When she hit it on Paige and went for the cover, I actually thought she was going to win the match right there. But AJ Lee interrupted the pin. And they did the spot where AJ... I think it was AJ. It was either AJ or Paige. One of them was superplexing the other. Actually, it was Paige superplexing AJ, or she was about to superplex AJ, but then Nikki Bella gets up and pretty much Nikki Bella powerbombs Paige while Paige superplexes AJ Lee, and then they're both or all three of them are all down on the mat. And then Nikki tries to go ahead and crawl over to AJ to pin her, but AJ rolls out the ring. And going back to when Nikki hit her finisher and AJ Lee interrupted the finisher, Nikki got pretty pissed at that, so she went after AJ, and then she went after AJ on the outside, but AJ grabbed her by the head and pretty much flipped her from the apron onto the floor back first. Looked like it hurt, and then shortly after, AJ got back in the ring, and she locked in the Black Widow on Paige. And it looked like Paige was about to counter it, even the commentators were putting it out. But just when it looked like she was about to counter it, AJ Lee kind of locks it back on and gets into position and continues, the submission hold, and Paige ends up tapping out, so AJ becomes the new Divas champion. I was a bit surprised at that because I thought Nikki and Paige's chances of retaining Paige to retain her championship or Nikki to win the championship, I thought those two scenarios would be more likely than AJ winning the title. And then after the match, Paige was just raging. She was yelling out, "That's mine," speaking about the Divas Championship. So after that, they show a video package for the main event, John Cena versus Brock Lesnar. John Cena comes out first, followed by Brock Lesnar. The match starts off kind of like SummerSlam and also their Extreme Rules match, where John Cena charges Brock Lesnar, but Brock just grabs Cena and charges Cena towards the corner, and then he hits Cena with a couple of shoulder thrusts in the corner, and then he tries to go for a German suplex, but Cena grabs onto the ropes so he doesn't get German suplexed. And then a few moments afterwards, John Cena actually manages to hit the Attitude Adjustment on Brock Lesnar. So at SummerSlam, it was the opposite, where Brock Lesnar right off the bat hit the F5. In this case, John Cena hit the Attitude Adjustment, and Brock actually kicked out at the count of 1. It wasn't even a 2 count like at SummerSlam, just a 1 count. And then a few moments afterwards, Brock locks in the Kimura lock, and this time around in this match, Brock put in the Kimura lock, I think 2 or 3 times, maybe 3 times. And Cena powered out of it the 3rd time. He got up with Brock Lesnar still, grabbing onto his arm, and then he pretty much charged Brock Lesnar towards the corner, so he'd hit Brock against the corner to try and get him off his arm, and that worked. Cena actually hit 4 Attitude Adjustments in this match. Brock Lesnar kicked out of the first 3 Attitude Adjustments. I'll talk about the 4th one in just a few moments. And Cena also locked in the STF, I think, twice. And pretty much Cena got a lot more offense in than at SummerSlam. I mean, just from the 4 Attitude Adjustments alone, that is a lot more offense than at SummerSlam, where he only got 1 AA in. And Brock actually surprisingly did not hit a single F5 on John Cena during the match. Keep in mind, I'm saying during the match. So, about that, well, actually, before I talk about the 4th Attitude Adjustment, Brock Lesnar did hit, some German suplexes, but he also hit a variety of other suplexes, like, belly-to-belly suplex, and he hit the Three Amigos, Eddie Guerrero's move. He hit that. And now, let's talk about the 4th AA. So Cena hits a 4th AA on Lesnar, and then he goes for the cover, and then we see Seth Rollins get in the ring, and he hits John Cena with the Money in the Bank briefcase on the back. And this is not, in the Hold Spartan match or anything like that. So, it's a disqualification. John Cena wins by DQ. And then Seth Rollins goes ahead and hits John Cena one more time, but this time in the head with the briefcase. And then Seth Rollins looks at Lesnar. He's down. So he wants to cash in the briefcase. But before, cashing in, he goes ahead and hits the curb stomp on Lesnar. And then he goes ahead on the outside, gives the briefcase to the referee, and tells him, ring the bell. And then just as Seth Rollins was about to get back in the ring, John Cena goes ahead and attacks Seth Rollins. And Seth Rollins then gets back in the ring. Cena chases after him, but Rollins just leaves the ring and gets out of there. So Cena's in the ring now, and he's looking at Rollins, and then he turns around. Brock Lesnar picks him up for the F5, and hits of an F5 on John Cena. And the referee never rang the bell, so Seth Rollins is still Mr. Money in the Bank. But the match ended in the disqualification, so while John Cena won, Brock Lesnar retained the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. And that was pretty much it for the show, and then Brock Lesnar grabbed the championship and left, while Cena looked disappointed in the ring, and the referee actually raised John Cena's hand up, and that was it. So, what did I think about the show? Highlights, match of the night, all of that stuff. For one, I think one of the best matches of the night was definitely Sheamus versus Cesaro. Actually, I think that was the match of the night for me. I really enjoyed that match. It was a great fight between the two. I would have liked to see Cesaro pull off the win, but despite that, whether Sheamus wins, Cesaro wins the match, it was a great match. Now, Dolph versus The Miz. I was kind of surprised that The Miz won. It wasn't like a major surprise, but it was still a surprise. I was expecting Dolph to pull off the win and retain the championship. But I think what they might do here with Dolph and The Miz is the same type of thing they're doing right now with Paige and AJ, where they're trading the championship, where, one of them wins the championship off the other, and then the other wins the championship back, and then, vice versa. I think if they have a rematch at the following pay-per-view, which is Hell in a Cell, I wouldn't be surprised if Dolph wins back the championship. But Hell in a Cell is, weeks away, so it's a bit too soon to, make predictions and all of that. But speaking of The Miz and Dolph, I'm really liking the stunt double thing. Especially with Damien Mizdow and The Miz, because Damien Mizdow, I find it funny how he copies everything The Miz does. And I like how right now he looks at The Miz and then right away does what The Miz, does. After the match, when The Miz was holding up the championship, he was also selling the back of his head. He was holding the back of his head, and then you see Damien Mizdow right next to him. He takes a look at The Miz, and then he copies The Miz's hand movements and everything. It's like a little kid, trying to imitate somebody. I think it's comical. It's pretty funny. So I'm liking Damien Mizdow, in his current role. I think this is a lot better than when he was coming out every single week as, somebody else. Also, like I mentioned before, I enjoy the Randy versus Chris Jericho match. I thought that was a great matchup. Kind of surprised, though, that Randy did not take out Jericho with a punt or an RKO on the announcer's table or anything like that. It was just a typical, matchup where Randy wins with his finisher. So that leaves me wondering if Jericho will show up on Raw tomorrow. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe his last appearance isn't Night of Champions. Maybe it's Raw the following night. Who knows? But also, speaking of, Randy and Chris Jericho, man, they've got to find a way to make that, RKO in midair spot less obvious. Because that was like the most obvious spot ever. Right when Jericho got on the apron and he was about to go to the top rope or top turnbuckle, I saw it coming. That Jericho's gonna jump and Randy hits the RKO. And it doesn't help when the superstars jump in a way that looks like they're trying to get RKO'd. Like Jericho didn't jump, Jericho sometimes from the top turnbuckle, he'll hit a crossbody, or I think sometimes he even hits, missile dropkick. But in this case, he jumped straight and he spread his arms out. It actually looked like he was trying to fly. And I'm like, what is he trying to do here? How is he trying to jump on Randy? It's like the way they jump to just makes it obvious that, what's coming next is an RKO. But I really did like the Randy trying to go for the RKO. I just thought, Jericho was going to counter. But Jericho, well, he did kind of counter, but I didn't see the code breaker, coming there. I'm also happy about Stardust and Goldust picking up the tag team titles, because the Usos, they pretty much went over every single tag team there is to go over and to face. The only tag team they hadn't, went over are Goldust and Stardust, and possibly the new Nation of Domination, like I mentioned in one of my prediction game videos, but right now they're nowhere to be seen. We've seen Big E in singles competition on main events. Kofi, I don't think we've seen him on Raw in a while, and same with Xavier Woods, so I'm not sure. I'm really hoping they do, the stable. They go ahead with Xavier Woods as Kofi and Big E's manager, and, we get Kofi and Big E in the tag team division. I think that'd be pretty cool. But yeah, I am glad that Goldust and Stardust are the new tag team champions, and the match was good too. Now, when it comes to Brock versus Cena, and the ending, I want to talk about the ending specifically. I understand the disqualification win or loss in Lesnar's case, because, this way, Lesnar, he's still looking strong. Because John Cena hit him with 3 or 4 attitude adjustments. Brock Lesnar kicked out of 3 of them. We don't know if he was going to kick out of the 4th one or not. But, like I said, he kicked out of 3 of them. John Cena locked him in the STF twice, or maybe even 3 times. And Brock Lesnar did not tap out. And Brock Lesnar still, most of the matchup, dominated John Cena. Yeah, John Cena did get some more offense in, especially when it comes to the finishers. But Brock still dominated most of the match. And also because of that DQ, and when that DQ took place, when it was after John Cena hit a 4th attitude adjustment and we didn't get to see whether or not Brock was going to kick out or not, that allowed Cena to not look weak due to another loss against Brock. Even though, I think he could have lost to Brock, once again, but I can see why, they would go with a DQ win or DQ loss. Because now, there's this big question, could Brock have, kicked out of that attitude adjustment? Was John Cena going to win, or was Brock going to kick out? But I think they could have accomplished having Cena look strong and not look weak, losing to Lesnar a second time via pinfall or maybe submission, if they had, Paul Heyman maybe cause a distraction, or Cena getting a bit overconfident or making a mistake or something like that. Like I think, Cena possibly making a mistake, and then that leading to Lesnar picking up the win while still having Lesnar dominate most of the matchup. That wouldn't make Cena look, weak. They could then point out that, hey, maybe if Cena hadn't made that mistake, maybe he would have won the match or something like that. But I will say, though, one thing I did like about the Seth Rollins interference and I guess DQ was, I was wondering, is Seth Rollins actually going to cash in? Is Dean Ambrose going to run out and stop him or something like that? Dean Ambrose did not run out and stop him. So it makes sense what happened earlier when Dean Ambrose was tackled by Jimmy Noble and all of that, and they tied him up and escorted him, I guess, out of the arena. So that makes sense. So now, it looks like they did that so that Seth Rollins could cash in at the end of the night, but of course that plan failed. But now it's also confusing on where they go next, because now Seth Rollins attacked John Cena. He also cost John Cena his championship match, and he also hit the curb stomp on Brock Lesnar. And at the same time, he's got Dean Ambrose, going after him. So what happens next? What's John Cena's next feud? What's Brock's next feud? What's Seth Rollins' next feud? Well, actually, Seth Rollins, he needs to face off against Dean Ambrose. Dean Ambrose just made his return. So, I'm thinking a Hell in a Cell match between Rollins and Ambrose. That makes sense. And I'd really look forward to that. But I'm also wondering what happens with Cena and Rollins now, because is Cena just gonna, I guess ignore Rollins, costing him the championship match? Or maybe they have, a matchup on Raw or something like that, so Cena can get some payback. But anyways, that's pretty much it. As far as the rating for Night of Champions, I would give it a 6 on 10 to 6.5. So yeah, 6 to 6.5 on 10. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, you can click that like button down below. I'd really appreciate it, and in the comment section below, let me know what was your favorite match. What was your match of the night? Which match did you enjoy the most watching Night of Champions? And what rating would you give Night of Champions? So with that said, I'm out. See ya.